Today, I'm honored to have Rowan Jetté Knox, the author of One Sunny Afternoon, join me again, but this time as his true self. Formerly known as Amanda Jetté Knox, Rowan's journey of self discovery, love, and acceptance is beautifully chronicled in his latest work. As a beacon of hope and understanding for many, Rowan's narrative sheds light on the complexities of identity, family, and the transformative power of unconditional love. So let's dive into this heartfelt conversation and explore the layers of his compelling story. Welcome to What She Said, Rowan.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be back.
And I just wanted to point out that I did mention your former name in the introduction, and you said you were okay with that. So maybe you could explain why.
Well, not every trans person is okay with their former name, sometimes referred to as their dead name, being used. I don't like to be called that in the present tense, but I have definitely made peace with the fact that I have written a book and many articles and done a lot of media under my former name. And so sometimes just so people know who it is, at least for a little while, that somebody is talking to, saying Amanda is absolutely fine in my case.
All right. So what inspired you to pen One Sunny Afternoon?
Well, One Sunny Afternoon is about my breakdown in 2020. Some people don't call it a breakdown. Some people don't even like the term mental health breakdown. It just sort of depends on who you are. But that's the best way that I can describe what happened to me. So, I dealt with a huge online pile on, like just a big dog pile, and it started off as criticism of my previous book, actually, the one that which is called Love Lives Here, and that is about my family story through two gender transitions. First, my child came out as trans at the age of 11, and then my spouse of 18 years came out as trans, and now lives very happily as a woman. Um, and so I wrote that story as the writer in the family, and some people sort of had some issues with the fact that I, at the time, not being out as trans, wrote a book about trans people. And that's fine. The criticism itself was not the issue. The issue is how it was dealt with and how it was very, very public, and then it invited a whole bunch of hate, not criticism, hate. And I was piled on for a solid week, I would say. And at the end of that, I ended up in the hospital with suicidal ideation. I was very, very close to taking my own life. And that started a journey, because a new journey, if you will. I'd already been through several journeys in my life, but it started a journey of healing. And at first I had to figure out who I was and what was going on with me. So, with the help of a psychiatrist, I figured out that I had a trauma disorder, that had been a lifelong trauma disorder. And then I had to get the right type of therapy for that. So, I started to move through therapy and started to heal and started to figure myself out, which has inevitably led me to where I am today. So, One Sunny Afternoon is very much about finding myself, whereas Love Lives Here was about the people in my life finding themselves.
And so you really dive into identity and self discovery in this book. Then, how has your understanding of identity evolved over the years, especially in the context of your own journey?
Well, I've been very fortunate, for one, to have people in my life who are very supportive of me exploring who I am. I've gone through a lot of layers, if you will. So trauma, and I describe this a lot in the book, and I think a lot of experts would agree with me that trauma is a very layered condition. A trauma disorder essentially is a disorder where your brain and your nervous system have worked really hard to find ways to protect yourself that aren't always the healthiest ways. Some of that can be covering up who we are, behaving in certain ways, trying to fit in certain ways, just trying to play a role that we feel will keep us safe. And I touched on that in my first book. I talked about how I had been bullied so badly and all these different things that happened to me, that I learned that I had to be a certain way to be accepted by society, and being accepted by society kept me safe. I go into much greater detail in One Sunny Afternoon, but as I started to heal from the trauma, a lot of those layers began to peel back. And the more they peeled back, the more I figured out who I really was inside. So it has been quite a process over the last 3.5 years to get to where I am now.
Your story is both personal and universal, really. I mean, you talk about the support you receive individually, and then online, I see it all the time, the amount of hate that you receive. How do you think society's perception of transgender individuals has evolved? And where do you see room for improvement? I know online is almost like a vacuum. What about outside of that online world? Is it better?
I think it depends on where you live. I think that anything is concentrated online. You can get very concentrated support and understanding in communities. You can also get very concentrated hate and bigotry. So I happen to live now. We've moved to Toronto this year, and in my part of Toronto, and basically everywhere I go in Toronto, nobody looks twice. It's one of those very accepting cities. I think in large part because it's the most multicultural city in the world. So people are coming from all over and all these different backgrounds, and so it's sort of a it's a nice little place to be who you are. And when I lived in Ottawa, it was very much the same. I did not experience a lot of hate. Occasionally, yes, but most of the time, it was not somewhere where I felt unsafe. My family felt unsafe. Um, but online is one of those places where you get the worst of the worst people all finding each other. And one of the worst places is for me is X, formerly known as Twitter, and it is every time I post something on Twitter or whatever we want to call it these days, um, an account that I can't see, either because they have me blocked or the account is locked, they'll quote tweet what I say. And within minutes of quote tweeting that, there is this influx of hate in my comments. So it's like a hey look, Rowan posted something, go and say something nasty. And so you get a lot of that. And if your content as a trans person is posted elsewhere, a picture of you, what have you, with a link to where you originally posted the content, people will come from all over to just dump hatred on you. And it's not just reserved for trans people. A lot of people of various, marginalized groups are dealing with this as well. But it is really highly concentrated in the trans community, and on the trans. It's very focused on the trans community because right now we are one of the scapegoats for to for a lot of politicians and groups to get attention and try to get votes and that sort of thing. So yeah, it is really unfortunate that sort of we have quite the target on us right now.
What's the central message or takeaway then that you hope readers will walk away with from One Sunny Afternoon?
I think that there's a lot more going on in someone's life than what you might think is going on. In my case, I think people had an idea of who I was and how I would handle things and what I was, what kind of strength I had. And I do think I'm a strong person. I do think I'm a resilient person, but I had so much going on under the surface, so much happening in my life that what happened online, maybe for somebody else, they would have been able to handle that at that time in my life, dealing with all the things that I was dealing with. I couldn't handle anymore. And that was nearly the end of me. And I think that sometimes when we look at people online, we don't see a person. We see an argument, we see an opinion, we see something to maybe someone to get our frustrations out on. And that's not what it's about. We have to remember people's humanity, no matter where we happen to meet them, no matter where they happen to be sharing who they are. So I think that's the big takeaway is please remember that we're all human beings.
Yeah, I remember a prior conversation we had a while ago that, one day, hopefully, you will be out of a job fighting this fight. And we're seeing right now a lot of hate directed towards trans kids. And on a personal note, I just want to say that I'm very grateful that you continue to put yourself out there and defend the rights of trans people. It's important and it matters, and you matter. And thank you so much for joining me, Rowan. Where can people get the book?
People can get One Sunny Afternoon just about everywhere. It's out on September 12th. It will be available at your local bookstore and online.
All right, incredible. I'm going to put that in the link when this goes out on podcast, and people can also find it on whatshesaidtalk.com when I put the show wrap up there. So thank you again, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks so much for having me. I had a great time.